to be part of the analysis was that actually we understood that the need for the whole full value chain to work is crucial. If you take a look at to the fossil industry side, for example, in fossil fuel production, it's typically nowadays one company that actually plays quite big or takes quite large role in the value chain, like from the beginning to the end. And then it's not that big question like who makes the profit. But when we are creating these new value chains for new products, actually the collaboration between value chain partners is quite important. So everyone needs to be able to live through the change we are facing. And that's why this whole group came together. If we take a look at who are then the steel consumers in Europe, so who should be able to pay a bit more in the beginning, it's first of all construction that actually buys biggest part of the steel in Nordics and in Europe. And at the same time, we know that that's also where the price pressure is such that actually to the full construction sector, green steel will coming, could we say, in the next wave. But automotive industry plays an important role in buyer's side. And then actually the smaller the product, metal product produced by a steel user is, the more interested they are in green steel production, because that's the way to put the profit in place, we could say. But here is the big picture, and this is the full user side that should be part of the story. We made a survey together with the steel manufacturers and together with value chain players, and here are the key kind of outcomes from that. It's clear that carbon price, standardization and permitting are in key role. Like if one of these is lacking, the full system will not be working. It's also clear that automotive industry is the core, car industry is the core in the buyer's side. So that's from where the first inquiries have been coming. And from enablers' point of view, lack of investments in grid and electricity supply is the core. Like there are these several topics, but actually the production of clean energy is the core. And in both Sweden and Finland, there is this plan to practically double electricity production. Both are moving, but both are moving probably a bit slowly compared to what would be needed for the green hydrogen production and green steel production then in the end. And what next? Yes, the question is like how this public-private dialogue is put in place, how we make sure that the politicians understand the field. And at the moment there is this feeling that they might in Nordic countries understand, but they might need a little bit support in that as well. But especially when we discuss about European Commission, European Parliament and decision makers there is quite a lot of work to be done. And that's why this group has been brought together to have a look at like, hey, how should we explain what the full story for Nordic near zero, Nordic green steel would be. So this is it. And the plan is that this is like the kickoff phase of what we are about to do, and the plan is to continue with full analysis. This was only a survey and the starting point, and next spring the idea is to continue.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. And good to then have a great panel here to help us understand how to move forward and to solve this pretty challenging question. Since not everyone knows maybe each other here, and maybe not everyone knows the companies that are here, I thought we'd start with a very short one-sentence introduction of everyone here. So if you could be prepared for that. And while you think about what you're going to say, I'll start myself first. So I'm Henrik Tegnér, and I'm Head of Strategy and Sustainability for AFRY. We are engineering and design and advisory company. So we work a lot with supporting companies who wants to build new fossil-free steel or energy assets or whatever it might be. We're based in Sweden, but we operate in more than 100 countries. And I'll hand over to you, Anna, if you want to continue.
Thank you.
The next. Yeah.
Now? Yes. Alfa Laval, yes, we're here because we are a big user and buyer of steel. We have core technologies of heat transfer, fluid handling and separation, and those are at the heart of much of green transition. And we work with almost everybody on this panel, and including you also, Henrik and Avery, optimizing processes across the world. We're a global company with about 24,000 employees in over 100 countries.
Great.
Thank you. Good morning. Joras Rauramo. I'm CEO of Coolbrook. Coolbrook has developed, piloted in large scale, and now commercializing our technology to electrify high temperature process heating. Like this. You hear? The battery is dead.
Okay.
Well, seems like we have lack of electricity. So I was about to say that we electrify high temperature process heating across key industry sectors, steel most notably, also cement, chemicals and petrochemicals, and look to reduce global CO2 emissions by 2.4 billion tons on annual level.
Good morning. My name is Martin Pei. I'm the CTO of SSAB. SSAB is the largest steel company in the Nordic countries, operating major production sites in Finland and Sweden, and also 2 steel plants in the United States. In Sweden and Finland, we run the steel production based on using Nordic iron ore, northern Sweden, and using coal that we import as far away as from Australia, running our blast furnaces, making steel from iron ore. And that is the reason why we are the largest CO2 emitting companies both in Sweden and Finland. And SSAB has taken a lead, developed the new technology using hydrogen instead of coal for iron ore reduction. And we just finished the research program with running the pilot plant. And now we are starting to convert our current production plants to this new technology, and we are on the way to really scale this up, and hopefully we can cut both Sweden's and Finland's CO2 emission in the coming 5 to 10 years. So we really support the national goals from these both countries and provide our customers with fossil-free steel. So, as Anna is here, and among many other customers that are waiting for us to do this technology shift.
That's great. And Tuuli, you want to finish off on just
I can just add that I'm Tuuli Kaskinen from Climate Leadership Coalition, and this project has been run together with We Mean Business Coalition and Demos Helsinki. So that's the crew behind.
Yeah, great. I'd like to go back to you, Martin, here, because these are really ambitious plans that you're presenting, and being a citizen of Sweden, we really appreciate that you then work with decarbonizing our country, also our neighbors. But as a company, how did you come to this conclusion that this is the right decision for you to have these very, very high ambitions, probably one of the ambitions in the world?
It is the most ambitious in the world among steel companies. I just make a quick introduction of the background, why we are where we are. I've been working for SSAB since 2001. I'm a metallurgist. I've been engaged with all the discussions that led to the European Union's introduction of the emission rights trading system. Have done a lot of research regarding possibilities to cut emissions from current production technology, further improving the blast furnace technology. A lot of trials have been done in the past, including investigating carbon capture and storage possibilities in Sweden and Finland, around in the industry. When the question became more clear to us, especially around 2014 and 2015, during the final negotiation of the Paris Agreement, it was very clear to SSAB that the best solution for at least us as a steel company, but also for many others in the industry, is if we could develop a technology that we can avoid the use of carbon in the process. Hydrogen is a good element that can be used for iron ore reduction that has been known for many decades, but it has never been successful earlier tries to make this technology work. And we decided, let's do this real effort to create an R&D package. So we launched the hybrid initiative. Hybrid stands for Hydrogen Breakthrough Iron Making Technology. So essentially, what we decided to do is to repurpose a currently already existing technology that is using natural gas for iron ore reduction and replace that with hydrogen that is produced by water electrolysis. And the electricity that is used in our concept should come from renewable sources. With that, we can produce iron and steel from iron ore without using coal. So we can avoid the need for CCS. That was the thinking, and we launched this very extensive research program. So far spent around 200 million euros already spent, and the result of that research program has been very successful, better than what we would have dared to hope for. And we started to deliver small trial deliveries of fossil-free steel to our customers. And Anna has been one of the companies that has tried these first small deliveries. And our customers are happy with the quality, and we have now decided to do these big investments. And the reason behind that, major reason for SSAB, of course, is this is a possibility for us to cut all the emissions. It is also a better use of capital, because if we don't do these type of investments, we would need to reinvest in our current assets and continue to make iron using coal that we have to import, and on top of that, we have to pay the emission cost. So the overall, and of course, the most important thing is that there is a customer demand. Customers are waiting for us to do this transformation. And our board has made the decision for two major transformations. One is our first mill, Oxylozone, they're currently under construction. So in 2 years, 2026, our plan is to have the new mill up and running and shut down the coke oven plant, the blast furnace's first mill. A second mill is decided in Luleå, where we invest heavily, completely new steel mill, fossil-free, without using any fossil fuels. Together with the LKB that's investing in the scale-up hybrid technology, we will create a value chain from iron ore to steel without CO2 emissions. And we are waiting, our board, of course, is to take the third decision that we hope will come soon, and that's how to transform also the Finnish production system. So that is what the reason.
Very, very ambitious, and thank you very much for sharing that. And yeah, of course you need then some customers who also are willing to use this fossil-free steel. So over to you in Alfa Laval, because you're buying from SSAB. I think you also have a deal with Outokumpu to buy fossil-free steel from them. How do you see the next steps on becoming a net zero or near zero steel user?
Yeah.
And what are your driving forces behind that?
I mean, it's very important to us. I have a card in my hand about the first near fossil-free heat exchanger that we produced with SSAB steel. It's super important because we both are a responsible company having science-based net zero targets, and we have to get there. And to get there, we need net zero steel. And that is one of the main reasons. And we're actually now just saying that we're accelerating that to get to net zero in our own operations faster than 2030, because we think it's good business, competitiveness to do this. And also because it's now, because we yep. I think it's okay. Where was I? That not only do we have our own targets, but most of all, we want to contribute to society, making the green transition, as I said, very much at the heart of many things. And I've heard from SSAB, might be wrong now, Martin, you have to correct me, but you can save 10 million CO2 emissions with the fossil-free steel, or near fossil-free. And the heat exchangers that we make using that steel saves and have the potential of saving 50 million CO2 emissions. So you see the need. We have to have that steel to really make a difference in society. And we also need more renewables. And we are using those heat exchanger and other things that made our metals from SSAB and Outokumpu and others to make renewables available and speed that up, the clean technology, energy storage, etc. So there's so many different parts of why this is important and why we try to find more, but it's also complex.
Yeah.
Should I get to that or wait maybe Henrik?
You wait with the complexity a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to hear, because you say that it is of course the right thing to do for you as a responsible company, but how do you see the demand from customers?
It is mostly front runners. We have now a product line that is dedicated to this material, but that's a very small part of our production, because we've sold the first heat exchanger to the Internet or European Spallation Center in Lund, and we've had a data center customer, but that's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
And we have to also see how we can long-term get the price on the right level. And to have that on the right level, we need to also have a price on emitting carbon emissions. So it's early in the start, both because of the demand for those products. It's only the front runners being ready. And we also need to scale up the production because we need more. We need to buy more steel, not just from SSAB, but Outokumpu and other suppliers, because we have them across the world.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. I'll go over to you, Jonas, because you have this technology that you described very briefly before. So it sounds really interesting in how you do that. But could you also then elaborate a little bit on how is this technology going to help in making this near zero steel? And if you could also then, what do you think are the necessary things to get in place from policy perspective to make that happen?
Yes, so Coolbrook's technology is proprietary technology based on turbo machinery. So it's a rotating device driven by electric motors that can produce extremely high temperature heat, up to 1700 Celsius degrees. So basically all processes in steel, cement, chemicals and so forth. And in steel we are working with reduction of emissions from traditional iron making based, like blast furnaces, increasing hot blast through electrification and reducing usage of coke. Then direct reduction of hydrogen with direct reduction of iron with hydrogen requires very high temperature heat for the process. We can provide that heat obviously, and in recycled steel as well, high temperatures needed. And obviously all the processing after the iron and steel making to then finished products requires also reheating furnaces, annealing furnaces, hot rolling, cold rolling, etc. And in addition to using green electricity, which as such electric heating is very high energy efficiency, 95% or so, we can also do looping of waste heat back to the process so that we can even further enhance the energy efficiency of the plants, and thereby obviously we are not so reliant on CO2 pricing, even if of course it's very important driver. But on the policies, of course, green electricity, I worked with renewables 8 years before joining Coolbrook, so I've done my fair share in that and noticed the challenges, obviously making permitting easier, but the transmission system, not only within countries but also cross borders, to make use of renewables more widely. CBAM, very important. We, in addition to Nordic champions, we work also with global other global companies, JSW Steel, ArcelorMittal in steel sector, and obviously CBAM is a key driver for Indian steel manufacturing, as for example. And lastly, I think that from policy perspective, and of course shout out also to the companies, it's important that we have readiness to do things, test things, not fail, but have the courage to test things. And I think we have created, in terms of grants and subsidies, a little bit institutions of institutions of institutions, but rather we should be in the position that we take new technologies, make sure that they are safe, of course, before deploying, but then get going and have a bit more agility and courage in moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Can I move back to you, Thule, because you introduced the survey here, and the high expectations that we then have on the near zero steel, but we talk about pricing quite a lot here, and what do you think is needed in terms of policy changes in order to drive the required price here for the near zero steel?
Yes, that's probably the key question here, because the market is created by politicians as well. Like if we go on like this, the technology will not scale out, and that's what would be needed. First of all, Climate Leadership Coalition has been advocating carbon pricing for 10 plus years, and it has been the kind of core thinking of us. So look, if we have that in place, then we are there to go. Now when you take a look at the abatement curve of emission reductions and have a look at where the price points are, there are these cheap emission reductions in agriculture, in consumer products, in energy efficiency. But hey, they didn't happen yet, and there is reason for that. And when we did this analysis behind this study as well, one of the consultants said, like, hey, we have two kind of emission reductions. We have the expensive ones, and then we have the difficult ones. So the cheap ones seem to be difficult to implement, and then we have these expensive ones in which we have to find ways to go through. Of course, we have to find ways to go through also in the cheap ones, but we cannot rely on agriculture, for example, to solve their emission challenge in short term. We can see farmers on the streets in Brussels, and we know what happened for Ursula von der Leyen and the 2040 goal setting. She had to take a step back because it's so difficult. So that's why there has to be the eye also for these expensive emission reductions, or expensive at this stage emissions reductions. And when we take a look at what the policy measures are, of course, the first thing is carbon pricing. It should be there in baseline, but we know that even if it would double from where it is right now, it would not solve all these questions. So on top of that, it's clear that we need incentives, it's clear that we need support from governments, and it's clear, and we have been advocating for European mechanism to do this. European mechanism that actually would support or would be run through the idea of expertise. So if we take the best possible solutions, actually the Nordic solutions are in core in that. So that's why having this European level solution, and at the same time taking a look at which are the most interesting and most able to deliver solutions, that's the core there. But on top of this, I have to say that this question of certificates came also as quite an important thing. I didn't expect it to come, because I kind of thought that we discuss more on the Nordic and European level, but as of course all the value chains are global, the question is like, how are we able to show what is the way we do it in Nordic countries, and how we make others to understand our way and to be able to communicate the differences between different ways. So certification is part of the story, and that also relates to the policy making. That
great, thank you, very interesting. But can I then maybe move over to Martin again here in SSAB, because okay, where do you then see demand coming? What sectors want to have your steel, and how much are they willing to pay for it?
Yeah, it was very clear that the mobility segment was the first, segment of steel consumers that are putting this on top of their agenda, because of the technology development with especially electrical vehicles. So the automotive industry or heavy transport industry sees quite clearly how to cut the tailpipe emissions. So then next step is really to take care of the embedded carbon in the product itself, like a car or a truck. So from the mobility segment, and there is also one advantage, because the mobility segment, the steel component that is a major part of their embedded carbon is also from a cost-wise perspective not the major components. So that becomes possible to absorb this increased cost from the overall perspective. There's also, of course, there are differences among the players in the market. So, for example, our first trial delivery went to Volvo Group, who showed on this very interesting dump truck that was made by the first fossil-free steel. And we have customers like Volvo Cars, Mercedes, and those companies are among the, say, first movers. That has showed great interest. But then gradually we came to a company like Alfa Laval that are among really the first movers in their industry. We have companies in the construction segment that are showing great interest to produce zero emission buildings and so on, and furniture companies and so on and so on. So the interest is growing, but still we have the challenge that how to pass on the cost, additional cost along the value chain, because only at the final step of this value chain they can collect and say this premium from the consumers. So these business-to-business transactions sometimes become more and more difficult the further back you come in the value chain.
Yeah, because I think that's, if I can follow on that, so maybe now in the early stages there will be a green premium. Looking at renewable energy, for example, we had in the history wind energy, that we have some nice windmills there. Solar energy was quite expensive. It has been clearly coming down the cost curve. Battery storage is going the same way. How do you see that happening for green steel? Will you get to sort of parity with carbon-based steel? Yeah, Anna, for sure. Yeah.
Yes, as you say, scaling is the key.
Yeah.
And it might seem simple, but as you said, Tully, it is a lot for on our part also about these certificates. We have now, as I said, the new or a product line just dedicated to near fossil-free heat exchangers, but we cannot show, because of lack of standards and certificates, that we are actually using this material. So we still have the same big scope 3 emissions in our upstream because it's not visible, lacking data, and we cannot show to our customers that we are selling a fossil-free or near fossil-free heat exchanger. So it's really getting the system to shift, and there's many different parts that needs to be happening at the same time. And I think we need to, as we are doing also, sit together around the table and just all the cards on the table, finding ways to push for policies, regulation, and not the least in EU to get to standards, etc., to get the certificates and data. And it seems simple, but it's not. It's very much a key.
Data certificates policy, I understand. Jonas.
Yeah, I think what was mentioned here is very important, to have this sort of forerunner companies, but also countries and regions, and I think Nordics can play much bigger role than its size in global economy or population here, and basically by getting to the scale we can also spur innovation, companies like Coolbrook who can help bringing down the cost inside the processes as well, instead of buying just technology from somewhere on EPC contract type of things.
Very interesting. Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, regarding the standard, I think it's extremely important. Now the World Trade Organization is initiating this Steel Standard Principles initiative, where the international standardization organization, all the national organizations are engaged, and we as SSAB support that initiative, because we need to get an agreement how to account for emissions, how to create a transparent and trustable way to certify a product. It is difficult with steel because we make steel and then it goes a lot of different steps before it become a final product, like a car or a refrigerator or where your products, you're part of it, for example. So that is a challenge, but there are ways that can be done if we agree how to do this together. So hopefully that will create a momentum in the coming years, so we get this, so everybody can trust this is a good product, not somebody, because there are so many initiatives out there, and some of them are, you create some concerns whether they are correct or not.
Yeah, but do you think then that the way forward is a standard, a stamp that says this is a carbon-free or near-zero steel, or is there a data point, this many kilograms of CO2 went into a ton, or what do you think is the way?
Yeah, we are working internally at the SSAB together with our colleagues in the steel industry, really to work out a way to deliver a certificate from each steel lot that we deliver that can be, say, accompanied by a certificate. The thing that we are working on is what we call it EPD, Environmental Product Declaration.
Yeah.
So that gives the transparency all the way back, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So our customer that are purchasing this steel product can put that data in their production, and so that can follow through all the way to the final product.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, totally.
Just to add here, exactly like this, but it's very important that the industry itself first makes the plan and shows how they are willing to count this. Because if we give this to policymakers to start with, I think we have some ideas how it might go. Like all of us have been advocating the questions related to more simple policies in the EU, for example.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important that the kind of initiative comes from the industry itself, and then policymakers can adapt it into the regulation at step by step. And
then steel will be one of the components or one of the materials you use. So for example, in Alfa Laval, you will not make products only from steel, but do you need then the same inputs from all your material sources, or how do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. We also have, for example, gaskets. They're made of fossil materials many times, and we need that from natural resources instead. But steel is the major thing, so that's why we've said that if we focus on this, and also for the world's sake, and we, for example, are part of First Mover Coalition together with SSAB and others, we do move the needle on a very, very important part.
Great. Yeah. Jonas?
Yeah, and obviously the question of standards and certification, it's the same in cement, for instance, which is debated all the time. Obviously, as scale-up CEO, I at times become a bit frustrated that we talk about standards instead of reducing the emissions. I know that it's important, that's not the point, but at times I think there should be the focus on doing the right things more than making sure that we report them in the right way.
Yeah. That's of course interesting. But how do you see that going back to? Yeah, sorry, Anna, you want to comment? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right in one sense, but another not, because we have to have ground rules. We have to know that we're comparing apples and not apples and pears, but apples and apples. And if we can't, then we cannot get the price we need. We cannot move the system. So it might seem minor, but it is actually one of the big barriers for us, because we have the technology.
Yeah.
We have everything we need to make this happen, but it's the rules of the game are not there.
The rules of the game, yeah, totally want to.
But I think that's the reason why we need also the lead users. So why this is not only scaling it through the whole full value chain, which is of course the goal, but to start with, we need those forerunners who are willing to make Jonas' business to be running and to support the early phase of development in these cases.
But we then have standards is one thing. Okay, so we are able to explain what it is. But still someone needs to pay for it, right? So do you have then, if you can present the standard to your end customer, will they buy it then?
Some do, but again, I think that is about, it has to cost to emit. We have to also phase out subsidies on fossil fuels. Yeah. So there's a lot of money in the system. We just have to direct it. And if we scale, the impact of the products does not have to be that big. But there's still, I think we are trying to, who should pay? We will all pay.
Yes. Okay, Martin.
Yes, I just want to comment on this, who should pay. I think we need to step back a step and think about the cost of these ever-increasing climate disasters that are happening around us. People actually paying very high prices.
Yes.
And some people even pay with their lives. So today, we are not having the correct way to handle this crisis. So coming back to this need of setting a price for emissions, this is to take care of the whole system thinking. We will have a cost of emissions that will go through all the investment decision value chains, and we can reduce those emissions. But if you don't do that, and then there are some poor people in some areas that pay a very high price with losing their livings, losing their possibility to get a proper life.
Yeah.
That's a heavy price.
For sure it is.
If I may comment just briefly, that obviously things need not be that expensive either. And we talked about scaling, but I think yesterday the president of Finland was talking here in another event by CLC, and he talked about the capability of human mind. And if we really embark on solving this problem, we see signs of it. But I think in 2 years back in COP, there was the discussion that now there's a shift in the future targets, but now we need to get it into action. I think last year we were making good progress, but now I think the last year hasn't been really to the right direction due to good reasons, obviously, or good reasons, but people have also other things in their minds, politicians, common people. And hence I think it's extremely important that we continue to innovate, to support innovation, take into use new technologies, and by that show that this is doable, and it's doable in a reasonable cost and in energy and cost efficient manner.
Very good reflection. Tuli, did you want to comment or no?
Yes, actually the question of what's the social cost of carbon or what's the cost of inaction is of course the ballpark we should compare. There was this new paper from US which said that social cost of carbon in US would be 1,000 euros per ton. And of course if we take that, then we didn't need to discuss any of this. If we were able to understand what would be the cost of inaction, all of this would be cheap. So no questions related to that. But then on the other hand, actually last year, Sir Nicholas Stern, you all know him, was on our stage in Dubai, and he said that, hey, we have been quite good in finding public-private partnerships in investments for industries. Like there is a plan, and this COP is to discuss about that plan. But do we have as good plans for families and individuals to be able to do those investments? They are not huge ones, but for people who are kind of struggling with the inflation and struggling with everyday expenses, they are remarkable. And that's probably where we need this collaboration also to be in place with public players and private players to make sure that those investments in cars, in apartments are able to be done also for like not only those who can afford it, but for all the people who to be part of the change.
No, but I think that's an excellent point, Julia, and I wanted to get back to also because as a family, okay, you will make maybe you have some extra money to spend and you can buy a greener car or whatever greener product it will be. But for many people and many companies, this will be in the end a financial decision. I need to buy steel, for example, and this steel is cheaper than that steel, and unless I can charge a premium for my product, I also will then take the cheaper one in many cases, right? So how do is carbon pricing going to be then sufficient? Okay, we're all agree that would be super nice if we could get a higher and more consistent carbon price. But I don't know how realistic that is. So are other policy instruments needed, or do you think Martin, will the cost go down so that you will get parity with the fossil steel?
Yeah, we have a strong belief that with the technology advancement, the scale up of, say, the new technology that are on the way. Just look at the wind energy, solar, and so on, and the e-vehicles now is also trending down the cost of. So this technology shift will have a journey to overcome this initial period with cost because of less scale, supply chain not mature, and so on. So in the long run, when a new technology really proves sustainable, it will drive down the cost. So that is very, very clear. But then from the steel industry transition perspective, steel today is if you compare steel as a material with many other commodities we have in the society, steel is today, in my personal opinion, sold too cheap. Because you think about how much energy we consume, how much resources we use to make steel. So per ton of steel, if you just imagine, if you go to a grocery store, you buy cucumbers or a potato per kilo, how much do you pay? And you can check how much you pay per kilo steel. It's too cheap. That's because we don't put the cost on the emissions. I think that is a perspective people need to think about. Steel is an extremely important material. Without steel, we can't live the way we do. But steel, it's today part of the problem because of the technology we use to produce steel. That's why we need to do this technology shift. When we have overcome that, steel will be part of the solution because we need steel to make the heat exchangers, to make windmills, and so on and so on. And steel can be recycled again and again. So it's very, very important that we overcome these initial hurdles, do this technology shift.
Okay. You want to comment on that, Anna? Great.
Just also on your question, Henrik, where other things are needed. I think we are in many, many different value chains. And our products, for us to really scale this, it's not just the standards and regulation on steel, but it's also the demand from our customers that they need to do energy efficiency, for example. There's a lot of gains to make, but it's, as you said, Thule, it's difficult. It's not that expensive. Actually, you make money doing it, but it's still difficult. And on all different sectors, there needs to be regulations driving for, in general, sustainability or the green transition. So it is a complex system that needs to be changed.
So, because I think that's an interesting topic when you talk about energy efficiency, which is one of the positive outcomes of your many of your products.
Yes.
But why are there not more money going into that? Because it's usually a very good business case. And
what
what are the blockers, you think?
Yeah, it's really the question to me many times because there are paybacks of less than a year if you do the quite small investments that are needed. And what we think is that one of the obstacles is actually the awareness, that we are not aware of all the upsides that are there. And that's why we've been founders of Energy Efficiency Movement together with ABB to visualize and create the awareness. And now we're over 550 companies across the world driving that. But I also think that it's complex. It is something that is not on the radar, and you look at all these big investments instead. But yes, and that's why it's so important with regulations to really say that you have to have in a new building, you have to go for energy efficiency. When you do something new, when you invest in renewables, you have to think energy efficiency. And we can save lots and lots by coupling sectors. We have data centers, for example. 90% is going to heat of the energy, and we can use that to then heat through district heating a lot of homes. But it's complex, and you have to know that when you start creating both drawing the picture of your city and creating or starting up your data centers. So you have to think right from the start.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, maybe to fill in a little bit, I think electrification as a vector to the change is a huge enabler to do this in much more cost-efficient way. It obviously comes also with the benefits that renewables by definitions are typically domestic energy sources, so you also cut imports from at least certain parts of the world where you wouldn't necessarily want to buy stuff. And I'm not saying this because I'm CEO of an electrification company. I became CEO of this company because I truly believed in this, because what we see in wind and solar, what we see in batteries, flexibility development, I think it's an immense power in that system that we should unleash. And of course, it's about permitting, it's about creating resilient transmission systems, it's about getting companies and people to use energy more flexibly and really utilizing the power of basically sun to power our societies.
I think that's a great point. And by the way, I also agree with that. The power of electrification. So we're approaching maybe soon here the end of this panel discussion. So I wanted to have a bit of a final question for all of you here then. But we have been talking, I think, in a very nice way about the opportunities that we see with the new materials, new technologies, electrification, but also about the challenges of making this technology now really come into action. But if we then would have something to send to our policymakers, what would be the one sentence you would like to give to policymakers, the wish list, if we can say like that? Do you want to start, Anna?
If it's just one sentence or word, then it would be carbon pricing. But if I can say a bit more, then I think also to sit down and listen to us. This is a really good collaboration, and we have a lot of insights, and we know what to do. We have the technology, and if we do this together with policymakers, then we can make it happen and scale.
Great.
I think I'll take it a little bit more on a philosophical level. So the word I like to use always is courage to act. Politicians nor companies should not be too afraid of making mistakes. We know the direction where we need to go, and now is really the time to take the action. We can course correct along the way, but if we don't take action, the price will be much higher to pay.
The politicians, I think, can be today quite confident that the technology to transform the steel industry is there. And we need to have support from the political system to create conditions so this transformation can go quicker. Because climate cannot wait. We can't wait too long. What the politicians can do is to help us to really create the preconditions. We get also improvement in competitiveness when we do this transformation. For example, create a quicker process of permit. We mentioned already about that. But also really scale up renewable electricity investments so we get a competitive price of electricity that we will need in many industries. Steel industry is one of the heaviest one. And also make this become a more resilient society, because today we produce steel by importing coal around the globe. That cannot be sustainable. Let's try to change this quickly.
Very good, thank you.
If it was one word, it would be clean energy. That's what is needed in amazing amounts compared to what we have had it. So doubling, the goal for doubling energy production, clean energy production in Nordic countries is the core. But I have to say that it hasn't been that difficult to deliver this general message. Like when I first time called to the Finnish ministry in this sector, he was like a bit like, finally, great that you called. This is the thing on my table. Like for Finland and Sweden to meet their goals, their climate goals, these are crucial things. There's no choice but to be able to run this through. But the other part of the story is, of course, to make sure that the transformation is as important to all countries. And that's why we are here, and that's why this conference and decisions from here dealing with the NDCs, for example, are so important, because those decisions on country targets define how the green market globally actually grows. And that's, of course, needed here.
That's why we're also here. So with those words, I would like to thank you very much for a super interesting discussion. I think promising that we have the technology. We can decarbonize the steel. We also have you as companies very willing to be part of this value chain. We need carbon price and we need a bit of support from policymakers, and then you will make it happen. Is that so easy? Yeah?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Technology may be available